night hides bad design. Boxy shapes dissolve into darkness. Tall grills and upright windshields turn into anonymous silhouettes under dim streetlights. But some cars still look strange, even at midnight. Too smooth, too rounded, too modern for the cobblestones they're standing on. This is the story of the Chrysler Airflow, a car born in wind tunnels and engineering labs, shaped by Orville Wright's data and Carl Breer's obsession with air and weight distribution. It promised better safety, better comfort, and higher speed with less power, then hit the market and almost took Chrysler down with it. Tonight, in the Car Story Vault, we open the file marked Airflow. We'll follow it from reverse test cars driving backwards through Detroit to the 1934 New York Auto Show, where it looked like the future, and then through the slow, painful years where customers chose the past instead. So settle in. Imagine a rainy American Main Street in 1934, full of upright Fords and Chevrolets, and one low, rounded Chrysler, gliding past like a streamlined train car that took a wrong turn, a car designed to beat the wind, and beaten in the end by human habit. The Airflow story starts with an engineer looking at the sky. Carl Breer, one of Chrysler's three musketeers, alongside Fred Zeter and Owen Skelton, becomes fascinated by how things move through air, geese in formation, airplanes, airships. He notices that nature and aviation rarely use the blunt, upright shapes that define American cars in the late 1920s. With Chrysler's support, Breer's team starts experimenting. They build a wind tunnel at Highland Park, and with help from Orville Wright, test dozens of scale models over 50 by 1930, looking for shapes that slice the air rather than fight it. The results are embarrassing for the industry. Conventional two-box sedans of the day are so aerodynamically bad that they actually test better when turned around and driven backwards. At the same time, the engineers rethink structure. If the body itself could carry load, a unibody, rather than a separate body on a ladder frame, they could make a car lighter and stronger at the same time. It's a radical idea for an era when wood is still part of many car bodies, and most customers have never heard the word aerodynamics. But Chrysler doesn't want to build just another pretty shell. Walter Chrysler wants a technological showpiece, a car that proves his company can lead, not follow. That decision will shape everything that follows, for better and for worse. Before anyone sees the Airflow, Chrysler sets up a stunt. They take a conventional 1933 Chrysler, reverse the chassis layout so the front axle and steering gear sit at the back, and drive it backwards through Detroit. To onlookers, it looks like a car going the wrong way down the street, grille and headlights where the trunk should be. The point is simple and brutal. If a car shaped like a brick drives better with the blunt end at the rear, then maybe the whole idea of what a car should look like is wrong. Inside the engineering department, the Airflow is taking shape. A streamlined body with integrated fenders, a sloping grille, headlights faired into the front, a split windshield, and a roofline that gently curves into the tail instead of ending abruptly. Underneath, the structure is a welded steel unibody, making the car more rigid and allowing engineers to reposition everything. The big inline-8 engine moves forward to sit over the front axle, and passengers are brought inward so they sit between the axles, not perched over the rear wheels. Weight distribution improves from the typical rear-heavy 45 to 55 of the day to roughly 54 to 46, close to 50-50 when loaded, transforming ride and handling. On paper and in the wind tunnel, the Airflow is everything Breer dreamed of. A full-size car needing less power to go the same speed, more stable on slippery roads, safer in a crash thanks to its rigid steel shell and forward-moved engine. Now Chrysler has to sell it to people who still think of style as tall radiators and separate fenders. The Chrysler and DeSoto Airflows debut for 1934 and hit the New York Auto Show like visitors from another planet. The front end wears a waterfall grille integrated into the body, flanked by headlights almost flush with the fenders. The cabin is pushed forward, windshield raked back, roof and trunk flowing into a single smooth volume rather than the upright house-on-wheels look buyers are used to. Under the hood of Chrysler's Series CU Airflow sits a 5.3-liter flathead inline-8, making around 115 horsepower, enough to push the streamlined car to higher cruising speeds than its boxier rivals, with similar or smaller engines. DeSoto's version uses a 6-cylinder, offering the same concept in a slightly smaller, cheaper package. Early reactions from the press and show crowds are surprisingly positive. By some accounts, Chrysler takes more than 18,000 orders after the 1934 show season. People are genuinely curious about this radical new machine. But curiosity doesn't always survive contact with reality. Production is rushed, quality problems creep into the first cars, and rumors spread that the unibody can't be repaired, that the new construction is unsafe, that the strange shape is ugly or foreign-looking. Chrysler mounts dramatic demonstrations, pushing Airflows off cliffs, rolling them, showing how the bodies remain intact to prove their strength. Yet on dealer lots, customers walk past the futuristic car and head for something that looks more like the sketch in their heads when they think automobile. Technically, the Airflow is one of the most advanced American cars of its time. The forward-mounted engine and more central seating bring all passengers within the wheelbase, smoothing out the ride and reducing the seesaw effect that plagues traditional layouts. Better weight distribution also means more predictable handling on wet or icy roads, right when America's road network is expanding and speeds are climbing. The unibody construction, steel throughout, with the body shell sharing the load, offers superior crash protection compared with many wood-framed bodies of the era. Aerodynamic testing shows that the streamlined shape reduces drag enough that the car can maintain highway speeds with less noise and effort than its bluff-fronted rivals. And yet, customers don't buy engineering diagrams. They buy what feels familiar, aspirational, or beautiful in the language of their own time. To many 1930s eyes, the Airflow looks wrong. The nose is too low and rounded, the grille too waterfall-like, the cabin too far forward, the tail too bulky. People used to long hoods and separate fenders see the Airflow as strange, and strange often equals suspicious. At the same time, economic reality bites. The Great Depression has made buyers cautious, and Chrysler has priced this technological tour de force higher than more conventional alternatives. In a world where money is tight, few are willing to gamble on a car that looks like nothing else on the road. Stung by slow sales in 1934, Chrysler hedges its bets. From the beginning, the company has offered more traditional models alongside the Airflow. Now those normal cars branded Airstream become the real breadwinners. For 1935, the Airflow gets a cosmetic rethink. The dramatic waterfall grille is replaced by a more conventional, slightly peaked design. Other details are softened to bring the car closer to public taste. Mechanically, it remains a streamlined unibody with advanced weight distribution, but now it's dressed in clothes that try a bit harder to blend in. It doesn't help enough. Production drops below 8,000 units for 1935, while Airstreams outsell Airflows by roughly 4-1. The message is clear. Buyers want the Chrysler badge and engineering, but in a shape they recognize. Over the next 2 years, Chrysler continues to tweak the design and narrow the range, even as DeSoto's Airflow line is quietly scaled back. By 1937, the experiment is effectively over. The Airflow name disappears, replaced by more conventional models that ironically adopt many of the Airflow's lessons: lower profiles, smoother lines, improved weight distribution without the full unibody radicalism. Innovation retreats, but it doesn't vanish. It just hides under sheet metal that offends fewer people. What was it actually like to drive an Airflow, a 1934 Chrysler Airflow Series CU, with its 5.3-liter straight-eight making roughly 115 horsepower, isn't a sports car, but for its day, it's a strong, smooth, long-distance machine. Thanks to its aerodynamics, it can cruise at highway speeds with less effort and wind roar than many of its contemporaries, making long trips feel calmer and less tiring. Drivers notice the ride first. With passengers seated between the axles and the engine, pushed over the front wheels, the car feels more stable over bumps, less inclined to pitch and buck. Rear seat occupants, no longer perched directly above the rear axle, experience something closer to modern comfort than the punishing bounce of typical 1930s sedans. Steering and braking are still of their time. Manual, heavy at low speed, drums all around. But the car's balance inspires more confidence on slippery surfaces than many of its rivals. The unibody structure means fewer squeaks and rattles when new, a sense of solidity that reinforces Chrysler's marketing claims about safety and strength. From the driver's seat, you see a rounded nose instead of a tall, vertical radiator shell. The view feels almost modern. The car answers the wheel with a smooth, slightly uncanny sense of ease for something this big and this old. It is, in short, a car that drives like tomorrow, sold to people who still wanted yesterday. For decades after production ended, the Chrysler Airflow was held up as a cautionary tale. In the same breath as the Edsel, or later the Aztec, it was cited as proof that radical styling could sink a good idea. But as time passed, perspective shifted. Historians and engineers began to point out how many of the Airflow's concepts became normal. Lower, smoother bodies, integrated fenders, more rational weight distribution, all-steel construction, unibody frames. What once looked freakish now reads like an early draft of the modern car. Collectors started to take notice. Surviving Airflows, never built in huge numbers to begin with, became sought after as rolling examples of Art Deco industrial design and engineering bravery. Imperial coupes and sedans with their sweeping lines and curved glass now stand on concours lawns as reminders that too far ahead can age into just right. Clubs formed, archives were dug up, and stories resurfaced of Chrysler's dramatic demonstrations at fairs and shows where Airflows rolled, crashed, and drove away to prove their strength. What had started as a commercial failure slowly took on a new identity. A noble misstep that pushed the whole industry forward, even as it stumbled. Today, the Airflow is no longer just a punchline. It's a reference point, a reminder that innovation doesn't always pay off at the cash register, but can still change the shape of everything that comes after. So what do we do with the Chrysler Airflow now? Is it simply a beautifully strange artifact, a what-if, frozen in steel and chrome? Stand next to one at dusk, and you feel the tension between eras. The lines are pure 1930s Art Deco. Waterfall grille, sweeping fenders, flowing roof. But the stance and proportions whisper of cars decades younger. It looks like it belongs beside streamlined trains, ocean liners and skyscrapers, more at home in a World's Fair pavilion than in a supermarket parking lot. Open the door, sit down, and you realize how much thought went into placing you between the axles, how the cabin wraps around you, how the view forward is smoother, lower, more modern than the upright sedans that outsold it. Maybe that's why the Airflow still fascinates. It's a reminder that being right too early can feel a lot like being wrong, that engineers and designers can see a future the market isn't ready to accept, and that sometimes the failure of one brave car becomes the starting point for everything that follows. As the vault door closes and the last echo of that straight 8 fades, the file on the Airflow slides back into place. But outside, in the real world, almost every modern car carries a piece of its DNA, hidden in the way the wind flows over metal and in the steel shells that quietly keep us safe. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing to the Car Story Vault for more slow, cinematic journeys through automotive history